Imagine this: you are a man who has everything money can buy, luxury cars, mansions, a business empire, and the respect of society. People bow when you walk into the room, and your name is whispered like a symbol of success. Yet, in the blink of an eye, all of that power and wealth means nothing, because your body betrays you in the most unexpected place, on the floor of a small, struggling rural clinic where no one even knows who you are. This is where our story begins. Ryan Malik was a 34-year-old self-made millionaire, the kind of man who had been running on fuel made of ambition and sleepless nights since he was barely 20. Raised by a single mother who had worked herself to exhaustion just to pay his school fees, Ryan carried a deep hunger for success. That hunger had turned him into one of the youngest business moguls in the country. But behind the tailored suits and confident speeches, his health was crumbling. He ignored the chest pains, the dizziness, the exhaustion, because in his world, weakness was not an option. One fateful day, while on a drive to Scoutland for yet another business project, his car broke down miles away from the city. Frustrated, he stepped out, trying to call his assistant, but before he could find a signal, his vision blurred, his knees buckled, and he collapsed right there on a dusty roadside. A group of villagers rushed him to the nearest clinic, a small building with peeling paint, flickering tube lights, and the faint smell of antiseptic. The nurse on duty that day was Alina. She was in her late 20s, quiet, humble, and dedicated in a way few people in her position could manage. She worked 12-hour shifts with barely enough salary to cover her rent, yet she never complained. She didn't care about wealth or names or social class. Her only concern was whether her patients breathed easier after she treated them. So when Ryan was wheeled in, unconscious and pale, Alina didn't recognize him as the millionaire that the rest of the world admired. To her, he was just another patient, another fragile human life depending on her. When he regained consciousness hours later, he woke to the sight of Alina checking his pulse. He tried to speak, tried to assert himself the way he always did, but Alina simply placed a hand on his shoulder and said calmly, "Save your energy. You're not out of danger yet." He blinked at her in disbelief. Most people scrambled to impress him, yet here was this nurse speaking to him like he was anyone else, not a man whose face had been on magazine covers. For the first time in years, he felt invisible. And strangely, it felt liberating. Over the next few days, Ryan was forced to remain at the clinic under observation. His doctors from the city were too far, and his condition didn't allow him to travel. He watched Alina work tirelessly, attending to crying children, calming elderly patients, and comforting mothers who couldn't afford medicine. He noticed how she smiled even when she was exhausted, how she whispered words of courage to people who had lost hope. Something stirred inside him, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a very long time, but Alina's life wasn't without its challenges. She was the sole breadwinner for her younger siblings, carrying the weight of responsibility after her father's passing. Many nights, she skipped meals to save money, yet she never let her struggles show at work. Ryan learned this not because she told him, but because he overheard her making quiet phone calls in the corridor. He saw how she put others' needs above her own, how she lived a life of service without expecting anything in return. As the days turned into weeks, their conversations deepened. Ryan, who had always been guarded, found himself confessing things to Alina, his fears of losing everything, his loneliness despite the glitter of his world, and the exhaustion of constantly pretending to be invincible. And Alina listened, not with judgment, not with awe, but with sincerity. "You don't have to carry the world on your shoulders alone," she told him one evening, as the golden light of sunset spilled into the clinic. "Sometimes strength is in admitting you're human." Those words stayed with him like a lifeline, but just as a fragile bond began to form between them, Ryan's city doctors arrived to take him back. They brought stretchers, medical equipment, and spoke to him in hurried, respectful tones. Suddenly, the simple world of the rural clinic collided with his fast-paced reality. Alina stepped back, her eyes unreadable. She knew her place. He was a millionaire, and she was a nurse in a forgotten town. Their worlds were never meant to touch yet. When Ryan was discharged, he couldn't shake off the emptiness that followed him home. The luxury, the skyscrapers, the constant praise, it all felt hollow compared to the genuine care he had found in that tiny clinic. Nights became sleepless as he replayed Alina's words in his mind. Days turned heavy with the weight of his own success. Until one morning, he made a decision that shocked even himself. He drove back to the same village, not in a convoy of luxury cars but alone, humbly. When Alina saw him walk through the clinic doors again, she frowned. Why are you here? She asked, her tone caught between disbelief and concern. I came back, Ryan said quietly, because I realized the only time I felt alive was here. With you. You didn't care who I was, and that's why I care about you. Alina was speechless. No one had ever spoken to her like that, especially not a man like him. She hesitated, torn between fear and hope. You don't belong here, Ryan. You have a world waiting for you. He took her hand gently, his eyes soft but determined. Then let me build a new world, one where we both belong. What followed wasn't easy. Ryan faced the criticism of investors, the laughter of the elite, and the disbelief of those who thought he had lost his mind. Alina struggled with her own doubts, wondering if love could truly bridge the gap between their lives. But together, they found strength. Ryan invested in the clinic, transforming it into a state-of-the-art hospital for the villagers, while Alina continued her mission of healing with even more passion. Their love wasn't about wealth or status, it was about humanity, about seeing each other's souls when the rest of the world only saw surfaces, and so, the millionaire who once collapsed in a forgotten clinic found not just recovery, but love, the kind of love that humbles, heals, and redefines what it means to be rich, because in the end, true wealth isn't measured by what you own, but by who stands beside you when everything else fades away.